Welcome in, guys. Adam here, the Orlando Drummer, and this is the Orlando Drummer Podcast, episode 5. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. I heard we have a little bit of drum news today, finally.
It's not so bleak anymore, Adam.
Yeah.
On the 11th, Meinl released some product announcements.
Oh,
which
yeah.
are pretty cool. We've got a few cymbal lines that are new for 2021.
Yeah, I forgot I had these pulled up here, yeah.
We have the Byzance Trash Crash selection has been expanded.
Okay.
So we've got a few effect cymbals there. New Meinl drum rugs. I got new sizes.
So, with the sizes, that's an interesting one. Did they go bigger?
They have a small and a large. I think it's like 4.5 by 5, and then 6.5 by 6.5.
That's kind of cool for like a gigging drummer, I guess,
Yeah.
right? Because for a long time the move was to go to Home Depot and get, I don't know, Home Depot and Lowe's have like all these cool little drum rug options. Yeah,
they're great. Protect your floors, and then they've got like cymbal stand adapters. The X-Hat cymbal stand adapters are new.
Okay. I have one of the Meinl cymbal stand. You have to remember, it's weird with Meinl. They have the entire percussion division of that is Meinl, and they have a lot of weird like arm clamp kit accessories sort of things. They have a lot of really high quality stuff in that world. That's where the this thing, what do they call it? The Benny Grape Crasher hats come with their own little arm, and it's nice. It's like nicer than your, I don't know, the $24.99 Gibraltar ones or whatever.
Yeah, and then Classics Custom Heavy Dart, which I think you played before.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I have pulled up here. Not Classics Custom, the Pure Alloy.
Pure Alloy
Custom.
Yeah.
Yep. So they added a 19 to. I could just play the whole set. I'll put a little clip up here. I played these in Nashville back in August when I went and did 3 songs and a bunch of like mini lessons and some product videos. It was really for Meinl Stick and Brush, but I got to put those cymbals on. Impressive, man. They're really unique sounding. And Pure Alloy is just an interesting line because it's I don't know what alloy it is, but it's not B20. It's not like the highest end alloy. So it lets them get the prices down a little. But for what they are, they just sound so sick. Obviously, it's not my personal taste.
I was just about to ask, would you add them to your kit?
I mean, maybe one of them. To be honest, the 19-inch Crash, the new one, that's the one I remember loving, was that one. They're cool cymbals, man. And it's tough to put them in a specific genre, too, right? They're very unique sounding cymbals, but I thought they were really versatile and sounded good. Actually, I'll just play a minute from that one particular clip so people can hear. Check out what they sound like. They sound really good. So yeah, shout out Meinl, the Pure Alloy Customs. That's sick, man. I'm excited to see what all sort of gear we would have been able to test at NAMM this year. But yeah, normally we're in a good season for new gear, so we'll have some really cool stuff coming up for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited for this month. It'll be fun to see what the industry has in store for us.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And Foundry Reserve. I'm hoping that we get some new Foundry Reserve stuff. It's got to be weird for them to expand those lines because they're such specific, expensive, beautiful cymbals, but I would love to see a few more options in that wheelhouse as well, as would everybody, right?
Yeah.
They're so sick.
Bigger crash, bigger ride.
Yeah, or like a 24-inch Foundry Reserve ride. That'd be cool. Big old buttery sucker.
Yeah, extra thin.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Just a wave of a cymbal. Mm-hmm. All right, so that does it for industry news.
There you go. Easy one.
Yeah, small one, and keep it in the family. We'll move on to Q&A.
Q&A?
Which is always fun.
Yeah, we had some fairly good ones this week from what I saw.
Yeah, we got a few. This is obviously it's Q&A, it's question and answer. We get all these questions from Instagram, YouTube, OrlandoDrummer.com, forum area, anywhere. And you can email me at chris@OrlandoDrummer.com if you have any questions. It's the easiest way. I get them directly. They go to my phone. and I could think about it for a week. And so the first one is, I'm going to butcher this name.
Okay. We got some rough names on here.
Kakperkwietkowski_drums.
Beautiful. I think that was perfect.
Asks, what do you think about finding your way to your own sound and style? What sets you apart from others?
So kind of a two-parter, I guess, right? I'll start with the second one. That's a little easier for me to answer. Well, what sets me apart from others personally? I think a lot of it has to do with a decision that I made, I want to say 4 years ago or so, and that was to completely unfollow and unsubscribe from the entire drum industry, because I'm a huge fan of getting your influences from outside of the industry. I think it's a really good practice in artistry in general to look at other crafts, other fields, look at the shredders in, I don't know, the basketball world or wakeboarding or fighting or any other sport, any other somewhat of an artistic expression type craft, and see what those people are doing. And if you can take influence from there and bring that into the drum industry, I think you're inherently going to end up with a more creative work. I think one of the reasons people struggle with being creative or being unique is because the only influences that they allow in their drumming and in their drum content come from the drum industry. So you're competing with people, I don't necessarily mean competing, but you're creating content that is so directly inspired and tied into other people who are doing the exact same thing. And the reality is we're all hitting drums with sticks, right? So there's a lot of crossover happening. And I could reference a lot of drummers who are good at going outside of the drum industry to get that influence. But I think for me, that's one of the things, unfollowing the industry, it doesn't have to be that extreme. But just in the sense that when you want to be inspired, when you want to be motivated, you don't look to the drum industry to get that. That, to me, has immediately opened up all these other ideas that I've had for styles of content, how to, write music in a lot of ways, but also just the presentation of different ideas in when it comes to the context of creating content, right? There's a lot of video styles that I've gotten from the makeup industry, which is the cosmetology industry is one of the biggest on YouTube. The fitness industry, another good example. It's older than the drum industry on YouTube, and it's way, way bigger. The tech industry, that sector, older than drums, way bigger than drums. And so if you go to some of these other fields, it's just so easy to get new ideas that the drum industry hasn't seen, because in many respects, the drum industry is like 10 years behind the rest of the world. We're just kind of a slow industry when it comes to this stuff. So looking outside the industry, for me, that has personally been one of the most helpful things in fostering creativity, and it's a type of creativity that is unique and sets you apart from other people because you're not looking where everyone else is looking. And then, so the first part of your question was sort of, how do you find your own sound and what is the path to get there? And for me, this one's a little bit tougher, but I would say really it's studying outside of your comfort zone, whether that be genre or even listening to just other professional drummers, right? Because if you have your list of your top 3 favorite drummers, they probably all can go inside of this one type of box. So if you're a funk drummer, you might say, well, my top 3 are, these 3 funk drummers. But have you ever tried studying a speed metal player? Have you ever gone into the pop world or the chop world and just sort of explored some of the other ideas that those drummers might have? So when it comes to developing your own personal sound, just as a drummer, I would say studying the mannerisms, the patterns, and just the ideas of other drummers in different genres, that's going to be one of the most helpful things. Because if you're able to combine, let's just make this really like tactical, if you were able to combine the ideas of Mark Juliana with Matt Garska and then blend in a little bit of Nate Smith on the top, you're going to come up with this very weird recipe that is you, right? Your musical identity is sort of this recipe of all of the things that you've learned how to play and all the things that you don't know how to play. So the more complex and nuanced that recipe becomes, the more unique of a drummer you are, and the more impossibly difficult it becomes to replicate your musical identity. And so when you talk about setting yourself apart from the pack and being very unique, in my mind, those drummers just have very complex recipes to their musical identity. I think that just comes from studying out of your comfort zone, listening to drummers that might not fall right in your list of like favorites necessarily, but they're outside of your wheelhouse enough that what you gain from them just makes that recipe more complex and ultimately makes you a more unique player.
Next question comes from I am Drew Wooton.
Okay.
He says, you post regularly with clean professional content full of clean professional playing to match. How do you maintain that kind of quality, and how do you stay creative?
Sure. So at the core of this question here, posting regularly with clean professional content and maintaining it, right? That to me, a lot of that is like tactical studio stuff. It's how you set up and design your actual studio and the workflow that you develop for yourself. So for me, videos that used to take 70 to 90 hours, like a high production YouTube drum lesson, that would be a good example of a video that takes that amount of time. It over the years, they take less and less time, where now I could do that same kind of video in maybe 25 or 30 hours. And a lot of it is just refining the process. So it's doing the same thing over and over. And I know that answer kind of sucks because, there is no shortcut. It's one of those things that's taken me 10 years of doing the same thing over and over and over. And you find out what works and what doesn't. And let me give you some really specific examples of this. When you're editing in Final Cut, as you learn the hotkeys to open up certain tools and make certain edits, and as you develop the muscle memory, just like playing drums, you develop the keyboard muscle memory of which buttons to hold and press at the same time and what that's going to do and what menu it opens and where you click. That sort of stuff is one of the first things that you'll see speeds up your creative process. I guess it's not really creative at that point, but the process of executing a certain video. So that sort of stuff helps a lot. Also, for me, one of the things that helps me be more efficient in this studio is that my entire setup is what I call like a set it and forget it setup. I don't have to mix my drums very often. I don't have to adjust my microphones very often. For me, maintaining my sound comes down to tuning the kit, changing heads when it's time to do that, occasionally double checking that my microphones haven't moved or slipped or that sort of thing. But how I have this set it and forget it set up in the audio world, I also have that in the camera world, right? So I have taped on the floor many different spots for where my tripods go, depending on what I'm shooting. So I know what the camera angles are. I've memorized which lens is supposed to be here. I've also memorized the camera settings. So on this angle that you're watching from right now, I know off the top of my head that the ISO is 320, the aperture is 2.0, that it's going to be at 30 frames per second, shooting at 1080. Like, I have the camera settings actually memorized. And for a while, I had to type that stuff in my phone. That's part of it as well. But as you dial in a lot of these habits, I guess, or these details of your workflow, you will find that over time, a video that used to take you 10 hours to make only takes 6 hours now. And that gets better and better and better as you go. So a lot of it is just refining your workflow over a long period of time. There's really no shortcut necessarily. But for me, efficiency is all about that stuff. Memorizing your settings, taping spots on the floor for your tripods, and all of the details and things that go along with that. And of course, I can't talk about any of this without plugging my own drum filming lesson pack. So this is it's a course available on orlandodrummer.com. It takes you through all of my it's not so much audio heavy. It's really all about cameras, but there's a whole lesson on lighting, a lesson on framing, a lesson on lenses, on camera types, all sorts of different things that apply to the most time-consuming part of creating content, creating drum content, which for me is always just the actual filming part. Of course, audio is its own category. There's lessons separately on audio. And talking on camera is another thing that takes a long time. There's a lesson on that inside of the drum filming course. But and then to answer the second part of your question, how do you stay creative? For me, what I like to do, I've talked about this before, I like to sit on my ideas. So to wake up every day and expect that you're going to be creative, that's sort of unrealistic. Creativity isn't like that. It's very it's flirtatious, it's in and out, and sometimes you see it and then you go to, and then you can't catch it that day. And, it's just the nature of creativity. So for me, when I have those creative bursts, even if it's at 1 a.m. when I'm messing around on a laptop, I try to harness those ideas and then revisit them over time. So much of the time when you see a piece of content that I put out, it wasn't like I thought of it that week. I probably thought of it 2 or 3 months ago, and then I refined that idea and sort of, I keep like a trophy case of all of my best ideas, and then I sort of pull one down off of the shelf and then try to work on it, refine it, polish it up, and then eventually that's what you see on YouTube. So for me, staying creative is about keeping that shelf stocked full of good ideas, and those come randomly sometimes. It's just sort of the name of the game. So I don't want you to think that, or I don't want to put forward this illusion that like I can wake up and be creative every day, because I definitely can't. But when I have those creative pops, I archive that idea on a shelf, and my goal is just to keep that idea shelf stocked with ideas, and then you can pull one down and turn that into good content, hopefully. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Drew. It was a good one.
Cool. Thank you, Drew. That'll do it. We had about 2 questions per person there, so cool. That'll end Q&A.
Oh yeah.
Just as a reminder too, you can send all of your questions to Adam, or for the podcast in general, to just comment below on YouTube, comment on Instagram, send me an email at chris@orlandodrummer.com, write one in the forums of orlandodrummer.com, and yeah, that's it. That does it. And that will move us on to Sleeper Spotlight.
Sleeper Spotlight. Let's do it.
A pretty popular segment.
Oh, yeah.
We show drummers that the community might be sleeping on, and we get some thoughts, impressions, constructive criticism, if any.
Oh, we should clarify, too, just for everybody watching this time around. One, people nominate Sleeper Spotlight. Somebody was just like, hey, do Tony Royster. It's like... Okay, let's remind everybody of the premise of Sleeper Spotlight, and that you have to be slept on in some capacity. So for us, as we discussed, that's under 10,000 Instagram followers.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. It's in that ballpark. So for anybody nominating someone, try to keep in mind, if they have a 6-figure following, like we're not going to feature them on here, not because they're not sick players. You guys have nominated drummers that I actually love, and I watch their content.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is sort of reserved for people who we want to send more attention to, right? Who are getting slept on. So
yeah.
That, and then the other element, of course, is you can't nominate yourself. Come on now, that's not how this works. That would be abused so quickly. So nominate a friend, nominate a buddy. Shit, text your girlfriend and say, hey, you nominate me. If that's the route you want to go, give it a swing. Who knows what'll happen, but... Yeah, I just noticed so many people nominating like famous drummers for Sleeper Spotlight. Like, come on, man. I'm not doing Aaron Spears. What are you talking about?
We'll talk about Aaron Spears, but...
I'm talking about him.
He's not getting slept on. So we'll start off with Peter Marinland.
Okay.
That's his Instagram handle.
Okay.
And we'll, just start out with Peter 1.
Okay, let's pull it up. All right, here we go. Peter... I like his technique and that elaborate audio setup. What hi-hats are those? Peisty? What's the triangle? Istanbuls. Super clean. The sounds are good too. His left-hand diddle is very clean. That's one of those details in a groove like that that is a huge make or break, right? I mean, it could take 5 years to clean up that the little those 2 30-second diddles in there. Yeah, you can hear that's something he's worked out. For anybody watching that hears a groove like that, there are subtleties in that kind of groove that are really, really important to spend time on. So I can hear a good amount of experience in his playing for sure. Kick drum sounded good. I'm getting some like boominess through my headphones on it. And I would imagine this guy's into some audio, man. That is quite a rack behind him. That's intense. Really good, man. That was super, super clean. Very studio player. Let's go to the next one from Peter. Snare way more cranked in this one. It's a ringy snare, but I like it. Man, really, really clean. Definitely studio vibes all day in terms of how he's playing and what he's playing. In that it's not a lot of variation, which you wouldn't want in a studio recording for sure. I'm gonna watch that one more time because I think I talked over one cool little deal he played. Man, so his left hand buzzing is weird.
I'll explain that in a second.
Yeah, what exactly was that? That was some sort of delayed effect? What was it?
So if you look closely on the rim of the snare, there's a solenoid. And what that is a Czech company called Baslin Instruments.
Okay.
Makes basically a modular synthesizer.
Okay.
That attaches to a drum trigger. And what that does is it's triggered every time he hits the kick drum to randomly disperse quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes, 16th triplets on that little solenoid that's on the snare.
Weird.
In a random way. So that's why you don't hear any consistency with the sound. But that's not him hitting the drum.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say, I heard almost like an external sort of buzziness come in. Mm-hmm. Really interesting. I'd love to mess around with that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that module that he's playing with has been discontinued. I tried to look up the price of it and see if I could get it because it looks super, super cool.
Yeah.
But the guy's into a lot of modular synthesis separate from drumming, which is just a whole other universe that we have no idea about.
That explains the audio gear.
Yeah. And super audio nerd, but really cool ideas that hybrid level of drumming that kind of takes it one step further.
Sure. Well, yeah, I loved his playing, man. Very, very clean, very articulate. I like the snare tone of that last video, too. I like that, controlled ringing, right? It was really, really good. Hell yeah, man. That was an awesome one. So is that all we got from Peter?
Yeah, that's it from Peter.
All right.
We'll move on to Eric Drum Wallet.
Okay, Drum Wallet. I like where your head's at, brother.
You can play it in any order you want.
Okay. Our first one from Eric. Funked out. Super clean, man. Yeah, a lot of intentional dynamics. Super clean. I loved that. Awesome. First of all, he's using the same interface that we are right now, isn't he? Claret 2 channel.
It looks like it.
Yeah. Hey, man. Goes to she. Well, who knows? It seems like he's got more than 2 mics that I can see. Who knows? But it seems like a pretty simplistic audio setup, and the kit sounds good, like dialed in, fat funk kit for sure. I thought the whole kit sounded awesome. See, he's got the big fat snare drum on there, dry, fat sort of sound. Man, really, really clean. There's something about people that spend enough time in the funk universe that get this very tasteful approach. He had a couple of really complex fills. One that was sort of Herta based towards the end. We're gonna watch this again, but yeah, it's just very, very tasteful, man. Something about people that put in the time listening to a lot of funk stuff, their intuitions of which fill would fit here and which hi-hats to bark are just that was the right one, Nate Smithish. This is a fill. Not that one. There's another Herta one in here. Yeah, right? That was a... Right? Just a funk song waiting to happen, right? Yeah. Super tasteful. Man, that was awesome. This is Eric. Let's do one more from him. clean, man. That's a beautiful snare, too. Yeah, and that is our same interface for sure. That's definitely that 2-channel. That sounds killer, man. Yeah, really cool. You know what this groove reminds me of is Mark Lettieri, guitar player for, well, a bunch of people, but Snarky Puppy. He put out an album called Deep, which was themed around a baritone guitar. Super, super deep guitar sound, like a bass with 6 strings, basically. And in there's a song called, I want to say, Ridge something. Anyway, if anybody knows that song, I won't play it because of copyright, but if anybody knows that song, this groove sounds a lot like the beginning of that song. And it's weird because I don't really know what genre to put it in. I guess like hybridized funk would be the correct way to like categorize a groove like that, but really, really cool. And I love when you can hear in a drummer's playing like this, you can like hear their influence, that it's all sort of that funk style, which is just a super fun, enjoyable style of drums. If there's one genre I could revisit and play a lot more of, learn a lot more from, it would be funk like this. Some of these deeply syncopated, like it's fundamentally a rock groove, but there's so much play happening all over the place. So this is really clean, intentional, good studio stuff. You shred, Eric. I really like this, man.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Darren King.
Yeah.
Drummer from Mute Math.
Yeah, he's definitely that funk rock hybrid, Darren King is, that's for sure. A lot of the, what's the way to say it? Just like offbeat hi-hat barks that are in sort of a rock context, but it adds that like funky dance, I don't know, unexpected jab element that is a lot of funk playing. So that was really cool, man. He's a sick player.
Cool. And then next up we have Genghis Conway. Go ahead and click on the live.
The live one. Okay. With the blue lights?
Yeah.
Okay. Genghis Khan. Here we go. Intense light setup. Powerful player. Man, really, really good. I love when somebody is a live player and it's obvious because they play with a good amount of power and just punch to their playing. He was playing through the kit. That was so audible, even with an incredibly heavy mix, of the guitar arpeggiation thing happening in the background and, a full band mix happening here. There is something about the way you play drums live when you really dig in and just make that kit cut through everything. It just makes for a good live drummer. So in this case, I hear just a really natural live player, being heavy-handed, playing through the cymbals, through the toms. Everything was really audible and clear, and some pretty advanced concepts too. I saw some classic like right left kick. Like I saw some classic big enders, but also you had some bludges in there and some wild phrasing ideas that lined up with those specific hits of the band. So I thought that was really clean. Good example of just like a solid live drummer. Good volume and good projection. Let's do one more from him. T17? Play that kit. You can hear that power even on electric kit, right? Heavy-handed guy. Great dynamics. really good surprisingly good dynamics for such a heavy-handed player. It was interesting to see him naturally have a higher volume, but then quite easily just sort of like calm everything down, right? That's cool. That's a sign of a veteran for sure, that he's got this natural dynamic, but he's not stuck there. He can easily bring everything back down. I also saw some really cool, like, what's the best way to say it? What seemed like sweeping, which is you have diddles, so like right, or left, but inside of the diddle you orchestrate. So if you have right, with nothing in between them, that skips between different drums. So some sort of sweeping, but then also like sweeping with like linear kicks jammed in between. So like right kick, left kick, like moving. A couple of really advanced phrasing ideas in there. And his kick and hand singles were very clean. Bum, 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 bum. You know, just hand, foot. Definitely some advanced phrases in there, man. So for sure, it's a fun drummer to watch. And I like how, I've said this before in other podcasts, but like I love the free-form talking element. I love when people can just sit down and begin talking on the drum set when it's not exclusively rehearsed parts, though we need those drummers too. I'm just a big fan when somebody sits down and talks, because I feel like I heard this guy's voice in this clip, right? This is what you have to say. So that was really cool. And I like the contrast of full-blown rock kit live playing and then sort of at home in the practice room with, I think it's a TD-17, an electronic kit. So yeah, man, that was really, really cool. Killer drummer. Great ideas.
That'll do it for Sleeper Spotlight.
Boom,
if you guys
boom.
have any suggestions for Sleeper Spotlight, then send them on over to chris@orlandodrummer.com or comment below on the YouTube video. Or on Instagram or the forums of orlandodrummer.com. Anywhere you want, send them to me.
Send them over.
And now we'll move on to Accent or Ghost.
Oh yeah, ghosting everybody.
So if you haven't heard of this segment before, it's basically I will present Adam with a topic and he will approve it, accent it, or disapprove it, ghost it, and that'll be the final verdict for that.
Oh yeah, final verdict. What I say goes.
Yeah.
And that's the deal.
Until someone else speaks up.
Don't.
So first one has a video in tandem with it. Okay. The topic is bare hand drumming. And if you go ahead and click on Riccardo Merlini.
Okay.
It's the snare.
Let's watch this guy.
This is where everything starts from.
Oh, this guy is so fast. I've seen his hands. I can't do that. I just can't do it. Oh. Dude, he just has this muscle twitch on him. I cannot play that fast, not even close. So I've seen his videos before, where in a couple he just is like, here's how fast my single strokes go. It's just next level, man. And I'll tell you my one gripe. I don't want to say gripe because it's not like I've dug into his content necessarily, but I do want to hear him move these around a kit and sort of be a little bit more expressive with them. But just in these like, what's the word? Like these exhibition videos, just like look at this, which even Johnny Mathar, I don't know if I pronounce his name. He's kind of in that category too, where sometimes it's just a straight up exhibition. Like, look what I can do. God, it's so cool, man. He's so unbelievably fast. Here's the thing. It's a specialized skill because there are only so many genres of music where you would ever have to go that fast. But one of the advantages of practicing those crazy techniques like that, I guess you just, by comparison, so many things become easier. When you can play that fast with that much control, playing slow is just like, you can almost fall asleep when you're playing certain things, right? So, man, for me personally, bare-handed drumming it's just a whole different world. Like the techniques that you have to use. I'll give you an example of something that happened. I had to film some cajon videos for Meinl several years ago. And I had to play the cajon. And their feedback was really interesting because they were like, well, if we close our eyes and don't watch the video and just listen, it sounds great. Like what I'm playing made sense and the tones were all fine. But they were like, if we watch you, it's really obvious that you don't play cajon, which I don't at all. So all of the new sets of techniques that you would use for drumming with your hands, I just really don't know what a lot of those are. So for me, that's my lack of interest, is just like, new techniques. It's a whole different world that I'm not particularly into. But I do think it's interesting when, Benny Greb obviously has done this quite a bit. In the context of a drum solo, just get different tones by using your hands, for sure. I'm also fascinated with how, there's no real discernible rebound. So he's almost controlling the upstroke as well, because you're not having all this energy come back, right? So it's a whole different set of techniques, which is where I sort of depart from drumming with your hands. But this dude absolutely shreds. I mean, he's next level good. That was unbelievably fast. Even both of us trying it here just on the desk, nah. I'm like a solid 40 BPM behind that guy. He shreds. Go check him out on Instagram if you haven't seen him. So for him, I mean, shit, if you're doing that, hard accent, man, how could you not? But for me, you won't see me doing any hand drumming on the kit.
So we're going to ghost it.
We'll go ghost it for me. I think for most people, it's a ghost. Are you this guy? Are you Benny Greb? No.
Are you really going to put down your sticks to play with your hands?
Yeah.
Are you going to murder your hands just to play barehanded for, a solo?
Sure.
It's not really.
And a valid argument is, are you done working on the stuff you have to work on with sticks? Like probably not, right? It's one of those things where when people get into, let's just say you're in your first year of playing, and then people want to work on left foot hi-hat splashing. I'm like, okay, I mean, you can. It's not a bad idea, but also there's a lot more important things than when you get into the more obscure techniques. I think sometimes it's important to just, set some priorities out here. So I think playing the drums with your hands, on a drum set, that's got to go relatively low on the priority list.
Yeah.
Well, obviously the example here is with this crazy specialist, So I think for most people, you'd probably ghost it. You got other stuff to work on, man. More important, more tactical stuff that's just actually going to make a difference in your playing. Unless you're in a Latin band, who knows? I don't want to speak for everybody, but yeah.
Latin or orchestral pieces that require hand drumming.
Sure.
So next topic is dial tune drums. And if you don't know what those are, Wojtek, however you pronounce his last name, I won't butcher it.
Yeah.
Wojtek on Instagram is a pretty well-known drummer on Instagram. Has done a couple videos with these drums where he's tuning up or down in the middle of playing to kind of change the style of the beat. And he's able to tune in the middle of playing, which just changes the sound of what he's playing. And it's versatile, but wanted to know your thoughts on it.
Sure. So, I got the website pulled up here. There are, they're priced about right. These are all in the ballpark of about $1,000. And I mean, they look beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. So the thing is, I'm never convinced that the current popular realm of technology is the best one. That would always be a foolish thing to assume. So when I see a tuning innovation that actually works, it's sort of maybe this is the way to go, where there's a big fat dial on the side of the drum and it tunes all of them together. Getting costs down so you can mass produce these. So a version of this type of snare could exist way under $1,000. That's something that might take some time. But yeah, man, I think it's a really, really interesting concept. I would love to have one in studio to actually mess with it and see how complex is it. Also, how tough is this? Can it break? Does it require maintenance? So those are some initial questions that I would have. But these are absolutely beautiful drums. I mean, they're very, very cool looking. I also wonder how heavy it is, because it looks like there's a bit of extra hardware.
I bet it's really heavy.
I bet it's real heavy. Yeah. But, that's a weird trade-off, because if you're a touring drummer, you don't want heavy gear necessarily. That kind of sucks if you're moving it all the time. But if you could tune your snare up in between songs, that has a real application for a live drummer, right? Because if you could crank it for one song and then lower it down for the ballad or something, for example. So I think this is really, really cool technology. And kind of in this wheelhouse is True Tuner, right? Mm-hmm. That big disc that you put over and then you crank a thing in the middle. Stuff like that makes sense to me. I think one of the challenges of tuning is that you are trying to match all of these different lugs together and listen to them individually. Obviously, things like TuneBot and Drum Dial and some of those other devices are starting to help make that a little bit easier. But I'm kind of convinced that this tech will ultimately make more sense as it gets refined and dialed in. Dial tune. So yeah, I need to do a little bit more research on these, but it is very, very interesting. Very interesting. Oh, I see. what is his name? Sounds Like a Drum. Sounds Like a Drum. That YouTube channel, killer YouTube channel. It seems like they have a video on it as well. I'll have to watch that later. But yeah, man, I don't know. My question is, how refined is this technology, and how are they going to be able to scale this to get the prices down? Because if this just has to be $1,000 and up for people to own it, obviously it's not something that a lot of drummers are going to be able to afford on like this big scale. But I could envision a world in 5 years or in 10 years where this is just how snares are made, because it just makes that much more sense than individually tuning the lugs. But I'll give it the hard accent. I'm glad that someone used a pun again, that somebody is like dialing in on this tech, right? And it's sort of refining it. I'm excited about that. I think there's a lot here.
So hard accent.
Yeah, right. Hard accent on that. Very cool. Very cool.
And then just got a photo, just a little bit of a fun one.
Okay.
Go ahead and click on Instagram post.
Wait a minute. Okay, so these are if I'm not mistaken. Okay, I've owned one, so I can say this looks exactly like it. Turkey air fryers. Last Thanksgiving, we had our oven went out.
Yeah.
And we just hadn't used it in a long time, and I have a countertop oven, a little easier one, and our oven went out. We were like, oh shit, we have to go cook a turkey. What are we doing? So we went to Home Depot, got a turkey, like an oil fryer, and it looks like this, because I ended up repurposing this same aluminum type thing for like a water bucket for my chickens, actually. So I really know exactly what these are. They're just like, the kick drum is like an industrial fryer. That's what that is, right? So, and is this in a kitchen? It could be in a kitchen.
I think it might be.
Are those like grills on the table behind it? Or smokers?
I'm not too sure. I just found this on Instagram. The Instagram's Latoretta 2020. Just for fun, I guess, is the caption on that.
Yeah.
It's a very small little post that I found. I thought it was funny because we all kind of hear the trope of like drummers begin by banging on pots and pans.
Pots and pans, yeah, baby.
So there's some pots and pans for you if you really wanted to invest in a higher level pots and pans kit. There's your pots and pans kit.
What's funny, I mean, obviously it's not going to sound like a drum set, but what's funny is that it would have tones to it, because they look like some different size, right? Some different size, like aluminum actual pots. So I think it would be very metallic, but you would have like ging gong gong, like you would have some different tones. Yeah. I bet that kick drum sounds horrible.
It terribly, like, for no reason at all, just for fun. You couldn't put this in any sort of environment and it be at home.
Yeah.
It would just be obnoxious.
I like the cymbals as the actual lids too. That makes a lot of sense. Man. Well, if you need to cook like, a meal for 65 people and you want to play drums, just hit up these people. Latoretta 2020.
And
I'll give it the accent. That's cool. Why not? Hanging out in the kitchen, you get bored. Why not, man? I'll give that the accent.
Sweet. Now, maybe a more controversial topic. A lot of people do this as a little bit of self-expression, but when you paint your bass drum reso head with some sort of logo or name or painting, art, whatever, wanted to know your thoughts.
So I know, what is Evan's program for this? Evan's Inked, I think is what it's called. They actually have some program where you can it's like screen printing. You just upload an image and they'll put anything on there. I think it's cool. I think it's most cool if you're in like an original band, for sure. I think that's a really cool thing to do. I would say if you're at all sacrificing quality and you're like buying some horrible reso head so you can have art on it and afford to get the art, that's a little silly for sure. I've thought about doing this before. What I don't like is like the commitment, and that your whole kit now looks exactly like this thing, and it sort of dominates or takes away from the beauty that is the instrument itself, because let's be honest, it's like a bumper sticker for your drum set. That's all that really is. I do think from a branding perspective, it would be wise for a band, like an original project, to, if everybody throws in together and spends the $120 or $150 to get that kick drum head, because let's be honest, it's the big thing that directly faces the audience. So from a branding perspective, yeah, it's a good idea for sure. For Instagram content, I think that's a little weak. You don't really need to do that. It's just overkill for what that is. But I think another cool way to think about this too is the different environments that you might find your drum set in. So if you had, let's say, 3 or 4 options of those reso heads, you could put one on that is appropriate for the setting that you're going to be in. So maybe for the big show, right? Like let's say you're playing the biggest show your band has ever played, get the one with the band's name in huge bold letters, right? That might be a good idea. But then when you're playing the small bar gig, or let's say like the jazz lounge, right? If you're doing like a little cocktail hour situation, get something tasteful and appropriate, because if you have one that's like, we are the, whatever metal band we are, but you find yourself doing other types of musical projects where that doesn't make any sense, maybe have some options in there, sort of like your wardrobe. Like you don't want all suits and you don't want all like jean jackets, right? Like you have a little bit of variation so you can keep it appropriate with whatever environment you find yourself in. So yeah, that would be my long-term way to go. For me, just black is how I do it. I'm not trying to make a statement. I think there's enough pretty things in this studio where I don't really need to take away from some of the other aesthetic designs that I've focused on necessarily. So for me, like clean and black is the way to go. It's another one of those for me, I'm ghosting it. I'm not going to brand my kick drum necessarily. But if I was in a band and we were playing shows around, like for sure, slap a logo on it. I think that's like mere marketing, and it's a great idea.
Do you think that sacrifices any sort of sound quality? Like if you were to do it in a studio setting or even a professional live setting?
Probably not. I mean, I guess I would have to know a little more about the details of how they actually print on top of the heads, right? You'd have to know exactly what they're doing, because in theory, yeah, if you added enough material or matter or ink or whatever it is to the head, then I guess you would be dealing with like slightly more of a muted reso head. But for the most part, on a kick drum with the reso, no, you can get away with a lot before it actually makes a difference. But yeah, I would just be curious, maybe I have to look this up, but yeah, what exactly goes into the process of printing on one of those heads? And of course, the other thing we should mention too, if there's one head that I've accidentally broken more than any other, it's the kick drum reso head, because it has a microphone. In my studio, it has a microphone on a stand that sticks inside of it. And yes, I have the porthole protector, but I also have a savage dog, and like 3 times he's just sprinted past the kick drum or body slammed it for no reason, and just jammed the stand of the kick drum mic like into the side and crack. It happens. It just happens. So yeah, maybe that's something to consider before you spend like $150 on a custom, big old 22-inch kick drum reso head. That they do break. They break a little easier for me than any other head I've had. And on accident, because it's not like you hit it, but it just happens. So, yeah, pros and cons.
No pit bulls around the drum set.
Yeah, keep a pit bull away from your kit. Keep my pit bull away from your kit.
We going to accent or are we going to ghost that?
I'll go ahead and accent it. I think for a lot of people, it's going to make a lot of sense just from a marketing standpoint. Yeah.
And then last is maybe not so much a topic, but sort of a technique that I've found.
Okay.
It's the last video that I have for you today.
Okay. This is the keyboard, I take it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what we got here. Tricky accents. Very cool. Soloing over it. That was awesome. Obviously, drummers like Josh Dion comes to mind, who's just an absolute, just a very unique musician all around. So I want to give this the accent right away. This is just, it's a super cool way to be musically expressive. I've seen drummers do this with guitar and bass and all sorts of the multi-instrumentalist stuff that you can do, right? There's a lot of combinations. You also got to remember that we use 4 limbs to play drums quite often, but you can play a number of instruments with only one or two hands. Guitarists being a great example. I mean, yeah, they stomp on pedals, but for the most part, they just exclude two of their limbs entirely from their musical expression. For drummers, we think of that as like if you lost one of your limbs, like, oh my God, what would I do? But, there's a lot of instruments where you don't even use all four to begin with. So the idea that you would take one of your hands out of the equation of playing drums, I don't think that detracts necessarily from like what you're able to do on drums. You still got three limbs to do all sorts of wild rhythmic combinations. So I like this approach a lot. It's another one of those where it's like, for me, I'm not necessarily interested in adding other instruments to my setup. I'm a little bit more of like a drum purist, and then I just like playing the drums for what it is. And if I was going to play piano, I'm going to go to the other side of the room and play the piano. But I like this setup, and I firmly believe that there is a lot to be gained by doing this sort of thing, by forcing some of those mental separations, developing like more of a mental independence where you can assign a certain part of your brain over here to do this sort of thing and sort of separately assign the drummer part of your brain to do drummer things. I've always thought that there's got to be some really cool cognitive benefits that happen from that. And then also, of course, there's that comparison where if you can play certain ideas while also playing piano and you get that worked out, well, when the piano goes away or the keyboard, whatever this particular instrument is, when that goes away and it's back to just playing drums, by comparison, how much easier is it to just play normal drum parts, right? You could turn yourself into this like really proficient one-handed drummer because you're so used to having your left hand over here doing something else on the keyboard, right? And again, my favorite example of this is definitely Josh Dion. And he sings as well. So you're talking this crazy three-way separation where a chunk of his brain goes to drums, another chunk goes to keys, and another chunk goes to vocals. So that is an impressive level of independence, as it is when anybody does this sort of thing, right? There's definitely other drummers that have done this before, but really cool, man. Really, really cool. I got nothing bad to say about it at all, so I will give that the accent.
The accent.
Oh, yeah.
Full accents today, minus a small little ghost.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hand it over to you to close it out, but
all right.
I'll have you answer a question that I've been thinking about lately.
Okay.
Where do you draw the line between necessity and luxury when it comes to drumming?
Necessity and luxury. So, well, obviously studio stuff comes to mind, right? Because you and I have talked a lot about different gear purchases in here, or you've had questions about like, why did I buy this and what does it do? And you helped set up a lot of this studio when we first moved in here. I think one important thing, really, so necessity could go either direction, right? Because I deal with this with people that write in with gear questions, and they'll say, should I get the 8-channel Scarlett interface, or should I get the 8-channel Claret interface? And the reality is, they're both fine. They're both totally fine, but it depends on what your desired outcome is. So for me, the line between necessity and luxury is oftentimes relevant to what is the goal. Because if you said, I want to be able to record some Instagram videos, maybe cut a drum cover for my YouTube channel, and I'd like to do some basic scratch recordings for this band, this project that I'm in. In that case, what you necessarily need is not luxurious pieces of gear. You don't need high-end Earthworks microphones. You don't need an AKG C414 for your overheads. If ultimately you're just creating some drum covers, you might just need a GoPro, and you might need like a basic pack of Shure microphones and the cheaper option for an interface, maybe just the live mixer. So in a case like that, what you necessarily need is not that expensive. It's not that outrageous. And in your case, buying the Claret, buying the Earthworks microphones, buying that nicer camera lens, that would all be defined as luxurious. It's above and beyond what you actually need. But conversely, if you said, I want to run a recording studio that is competitive in my city, I want to be a destination for bands to come to me and have a professionally mixed album, I want to be able to cut let's say, high-end music videos that can compete with other videographers in my area. Or I want to be very competitive in the YouTube space, whether it's drums or any other type of sector you could think of. If that's what you're going for, then all of a sudden, that $600 camera lens, the $2,000 in microphones, the $1,200 interface, all of a sudden, that's not luxurious anymore. It is a necessity because this is your whole world. This is what you want to do, and this is the market that you want to compete within. So for me, I look around my studio and I do have expensive gear that I put my life savings into. But I don't define it as luxurious necessarily because this is what I do for a living. And if my goals changed, the goalposts kind of move for the gear itself, right? Like this would all be considered hyper luxurious if this was just my hobby. But it's not. It's very much what I do for a living. So for me, it is very important that I have high-end professional gear. With that said, I'm not running Apogee duets and Neumann microphones and using a Rupert Neve board, or a baby SSL, right? I mean, there's levels to this game for sure. But I think a lot of times when you think about spending in the long term, $10,000 or $20,000 in gear, yes, you can call that luxurious for a hobbyist. It certainly would be. But that's not the case if your goal is to operate and compete in a space where everybody has to have that level of gear because that's the quality of content that you want to actually put out. So maybe that's a good thought experiment for the week is, if you're looking into new gear, which let's be honest, all musicians and all drummers seem to constantly be looking for new gear, even if we don't need it. But I guess ask yourself, where do you want this to go, right? If your long-term goal is ultimately just to create, let's say, content for personal enjoyment or have a studio that caters just to your hobby, right? If that's how you define all of this, then yeah, you can draw some of those lines a little bit earlier and say, maybe I don't have to spend that much money. Maybe I'd be happy with some sort of more fundamental setup. But if that's not the case, if you want to be competitive and really like hang with the big dogs in the recording world, they have spent some money on recording gear and you get what you pay for a lot of times. So yeah, I think that's how I would draw that line between necessity and luxury. Just comes down to what is your desired outcome here and what level of gear do you need to reach that desired outcome. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we will leave it at that. This has been Orlando Drummer Podcast, episode number 5. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And of course, here's your formal invitation to come join me on orlandodrummer.com. It is an online education platform, very much in the style of Netflix. If you can imagine Netflix for drum lessons, that's what it is. There's over 160 hours of content there. That's the equivalent of about 50 drum DVDs. And you'll also find one of the largest libraries of drumless play-alongs in the world. Members can stream all of this content for free, offline playback inside of our mobile apps, which are for iOS and Android. It's a lot of fun. We'd love to have you on board. You can do a free trial for 7 days to see if you like it before you have to pay anything at all. And yeah, that's my plug for this week. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
All right. We will catch you guys in the next one, episode 6. See you there. Bye.